During the Roman era, the use of glass objects became commonplace. In workshops scattered throughout the empire, vases were blown from raw glass produced in the Near East. But where exactly? And how was this raw material made? Marie-Dominique Nenna, an archaeologist and glass specialist, has been searching to see whether these primary glass workshops may have existed in Egypt.
One day, a merchant ship loaded with natron, a natural soda ash, was moored on the coast of Phoenicia at the mouth of the Bellos River. As evening fell, the merchants began to prepare their dinner. Unable to find any rocks on which to place their cooking pot, they laid them on chunks of natron taken from the cargo. When these caught fire and mixed with the sand of the shore, thin, translucent lines of liquid began to flow. Glass was born.
This story, recounted in the 1st century AD by the Roman historian Pliny the Elder, is merely a legend. Neither the temperature reached by a cooking fire nor the length of the operation could have caused the fusion of the natron and the sand that is necessary to create glass. How then were glass objects made? From the middle of the 1st century BC, a new technique spread throughout most of the towns of the Roman Empire, the technique of glass blowing. Thanks to this, glass objects changed from being a luxury to being of everyday use. The increase in production of finished items required a lot more raw glass. But where were these primary workshops producing the raw material? Some have recently been discovered in Israel. Marie-Dominique Nenna began wondering about Egypt's possible role in this industry. Sand was the principal component of glass in the Greco-Roman period. As it was melted, it was mixed with natron. The legend of Pliny the Elder suggests this, and chemical analysis confirms it. The sand provides both the vitrifying agent, silica, and the stabilizing agent, calcium. The natron, a melting agent, lowers the melting point of silica from 1700 degrees to 1200. Natron is found in Egypt in the nitre beds of Wadi Natroun, the eastern and western delta, and in Upper Egypt at El Kab. But how to locate the primary workshops that produced the raw glass? Marie-Dominique Nenna decides to follow the natron trail and to gather together all the written documentation. A precious source of information is to be found in the many travellers' accounts from Strabo at the end of the 1st century BC up to the voyagers of the 19th century, and not forgetting the Description de l'Égypte, published under the orders of Napoleon Bonaparte.
There are no remains of ancient monuments in the valley of the Natron Lakes. We have seen, beyond the fourth lake, only the site of a glassworks that we could recognize from the debris of brick furnaces, fragments of clinker, and of glass in different states. The location where it was situated provides in abundance the two materials needed for the manufacture of glass: quartzous sand and soda.
General Andreossi, author of a monograph about Wadi Natroun, recounts how the workers went into the lakes and, using large picks, hacked out blocks of natron that they then pulled to the banks and loaded into baskets on the backs of donkeys or camels. Thus we can see on one of the plates of the Description de l'Égypte a little caravan heading towards the delta and the town of Kom Abu Bilo, ancient Terenouthis. It was there in antiquity and through the medieval period that the controller of the Natroun monopoly was based. Explorations on the ground can now begin. The plan is to concentrate on the areas around Alexandria and in Wadi Natroun. The first site to prospect is at Taposiras Magna on the shores of Lake Mariut. This was the western customs post of ancient Alexandria, known for its temple to Osiris and for a funerary monument that copied the shape of the Pharos lighthouse of Alexandria. The lake port was still in use in the 7th century AD. The foundations of the harbour warehouses show reused bricks covered with glass. The furnaces must have been set up on the two jetties of the port. However, no architectural structure is preserved in place. Mareia to the southwest of Alexandria, one of the rare examples of a harbour town on the shores of Lake Mariut that is still intact. The remains of furnaces have been detected here, but once again, no workshop structures in place. Barnugi to the south of Damanhur was well known for the quality of its natron that came from the lakes just south of the ancient city. It was then called Nitria, derived from the Greek for natron, but on the site itself, no trace of furnaces. After the sites along the coast, prospections were undertaken in Wadi Natroun. On the shores of the lakes, which stretch for some 50 kilometres, 3 sites of primary workshops were found: Zakik, Bir Hukr and Beni Salama. Zakik, to the northwest of Wadi Natroun, corresponds with the ancient glassworks mentioned and mapped by General Andreossi. Other travellers, including the British Egyptologist Gardner Wilkinson, had also visited the site and noted that a village that worked the natron was installed from the beginning of the 19th century on the ancient site. Bir Hukr is situated to the south of the present-day village of Wadi Natroun. It has been partially destroyed by modern sand quarrying, but remains on the surface indicate that it was occupied between the 3rd century BC and the end of the 2nd century AD. At Beni Salama, the eastern entrance to Wadi Natroun, 2 hills bear evidence of glass workings. On the southern plateau, the remains of a granite doorway of a temple, as well as ceramic material, tells us that this site was occupied from the Middle Kingdom up until the 7th century AD. On all the sites of Wadi Natroun, scraps and refuse from glassworks are visible on the surface. Fragments of rough blue-green blocks, good quality chunks of raw glass, bits of vitrified bricks, and solid masses of ash. how to locate the furnaces on these vast sites. It is here that geophysical surveying comes in. It is based on a simple principle. The ground has a particular magnetic field that can be disturbed by subsoil material. Now, after repeated heating, the baking of clay transforms certain iron oxides into highly magnetic minerals. Geophysical surveying thus uses equipment capable of detecting local variations in the magnetic field. The geophysicist moves over the site and receives a certain number of signals that will be visible on a map. The equipment can record anomalies up to a meter and sometimes more beneath the surface. The research undertaken at Sakik is to prove negative. The activity of the 19th century has disturbed the surface layers too much. At Bir Hukr, clear U-shapes begin to appear. Similar in form to large staples, some 8 meters long with 2 obvious bends. On the hills of Beni Salama, similar anomalies are registered. A staple shape, and then, 30 meters away, a big rectangle. It is here that 2 excavation zones will begin, Sector 1 to the east and Sector 2 to the west. In autumn 2003, a first mission explores the site of the large rectangle. The excavation proves to be more difficult than imagined. Indeed, an extremely hard layer of petrified salt and sand must first be broken using hammer and chisel. From the beginning of 2005, in Sector 1, the tank of the western furnace is cleared, revealing a layer of bricks that had collapsed. It turns out that more than 600 bricks were used in the vaulted roof of the furnace. The study of the sector continues with a series of soundings and exploratory trenches. The soundings to the west and south will allow for a better understanding of the immediate environment of the furnace and will provide information on the wall construction methods. To the north, 3 successive stages of the fire chamber will be uncovered. In Sector 2, the surface layers are less difficult to excavate. Soon the archaeologists will unearth the ground plan of a furnace, the floor in bluish clay and with broken fragments of raw glass. To the south, a deep trench shows that the furnace was almost entirely set into the ground. In 2007, the whole of the tank has been cleared. It is of impressive dimensions. The following year, another sounding is undertaken within the tank itself, but the hardness of the baked clay makes the work difficult. The archaeologists are to discover that this melting chamber sits above at least one older furnace, and that the floor also bears marks from the breaking of the glass slab.
Nous sommes devant le secteur 1 que nous avons commencé à explorer en 2003 pour tenter de comprendre la grande forme rectangulaire qui apparaissait dans l'image de la prospection géophysique. Cette grande forme rectangulaire doit être en fait interprétée comme 2 fours accolés dont les murs opposés ont été démantelés pour pouvoir atteindre dans les 2 cas la dalle de verre. Ces deux fours ont pu fonctionner ensemble puisque leurs murs ne se recouvrent pas.
Le four est construit, ils utilisent une première fois, ils cassent, ils récupèrent la dalle, ils resurélèvent en fait le four, ils refont un sol et ils réutilisent le four.
It is an exceptional discovery. These are the oldest tank furnaces yet discovered. However, they must still be precisely dated. All the archaeological material, ceramics, amphorae, basketwork, and small objects must be studied.
Alors la céramique de Beni Salama est une céramique qui est certes domestique dans sa conception de la chose, avec une sorte de batterie de cuisine assez bien achalandée, même s'il y a principalement des conteneurs, des amphores, malheureusement assez souvent fragmentaires, sauf quelques-unes.
Par exemple, pour ce pot qui est complet, je fais une vue générale de l'objet, une coupe à travers l'objet, et ensuite, sur mon dessin, je fais une vue de face. Une fois que toutes les mesures sont prises, je donne un certain nombre d'informations à la céramologue sur en fait, la chaîne opératoire.
Alors ce qui est intéressant pour le site de Beni Salama, c'est que vous avez le mobilier de la fouille effectivement qui est romain, donc 1er et 2e siècle, mais qu'il y a quelques poches qui sont beaucoup plus anciennes, qui datent de l'époque hellénistique, donc de la fin du 2e siècle avant.
We can now reconstitute the plan of the different sections of the furnace, the fire chamber and the very large melting tank.
Once the melting was done, the vaulted roof and one of the walls of the furnace were dismantled. The slab of glass was broken up into blocks that were then transported to secondary workshops where they were melted down again and blown.
Si l'on essaie de réfléchir au poids de verre qui pouvait être façonné dans un tel bassin, on se livre donc à un petit calcul qui est de mesurer la longueur, 7 mètres, la largeur, 2 mètres, l'épaisseur possible de la dalle, 45 cm, que nous indiquent des blocs qui ont été trouvés dans des épaves, et la densité du verre, 2,5. Cette multiplication nous conduit à un chiffre entre 15 et 20 tonnes. Donc une masse énorme de verre produite en une seule cuisson.
But what was the fuel? Acacia, tamarisk, and palm wood would seem the obvious candidates, but reeds and gorse were also important. They were easily available and in plentiful supply. This huge amount of glass was produced by horizontal heating. The heat passed under the roof and above the glass batch, that is the mix of sand and soda, and caused it to melt by radiation and reverberation.
Le temps de cuisson devait être très important, de même que la température qui devait atteindre pour la fusion entre sable et soude les 1200 degrés. Ce temps de cuisson, nous en avons une idée à partir des ateliers contemporains indiens à Jalezar, entre Delhi et Agra, qui ont été étudiés et pour lesquels on a montré qu'il était de 30 jours, 24 heures sur 24. Il faut imaginer une durée équivalente pour ces fours du Wadi Natroun et imaginer aussi qu'il fallait apporter des quantités de combustible énormes pour pouvoir procéder à cette fusion du verre.
The rare fragments of raw glass left on the site after the glass slab had been removed show that 3 types of glass were produced. A blue-green coloured glass and 2 kinds of colourless glass, one rendered so by the addition of manganese and the other by antimony. The size of the furnaces discovered in Wadi Natroun is simply astonishing. They imply a mastery of technique that had not yet been identified for such an ancient period. Reverberatory furnaces in antiquity are in fact known, but they are all of small dimensions. Comparing the weight of the slab with that of the finished objects shows just to what extent with these furnaces we are dealing with an industrial production. A slab of 20 tons could produce nearly 80,000 bottles, or 1,500,000 little flasks, or even 275,000 bowls. The fragments of raw glass found in the excavations of the Wadi Natroun workshops bear witness to the great mastery of the craftsmen at the beginning of the Common Era. These discoveries shed new light on the history of glassmaking in Egypt, and yet the story is only beginning to be told.